Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Shoot the Artist, the podcast where we talk to a whole range of different people from the entertainment industry. I'm your host, as always, Oliver Rednell, and you'll have to excuse my voice this week. It's a little bit raspy. I haven't just added extra bass to it or something. I've had a cold and I've almost lost my voice. So it's exceptionally deep. So when you go into the podcast, it might sound slightly different to what it does now. It's not an imposter or anything. Anyway, this episode, I got to talk to film director Michael Hoffman, who, as you know, will have he directed films such as Soapdish, Restoration with Robert Downey Jr., period drama, One Fine Day with Michelle Pfeiffer and George Clooney, which is an excellent rom-com, Gambit, The Last Station, another great one, and he's currently developing his own TV show, writing, and he's going to direct, producing as well. With Kevin Kline, and we talked about this a couple of years ago on another podcast, and it's still in development, and we talk about the challenges involved in bringing a TV show to the screen and the difficulties of that. So it's an excellent episode. I would have talked to him for ages, but obviously I can't have a 6-hour-long podcast, but I could have gone on and on talking about the industry. He's an incredible wealth of knowledge. So sit back and enjoy.
What's up?
Yeah, I'm all right. How are you?
Good. I just finished. I did a little, I've been teaching out at Lambda. They asked me to do this sort of workshop production of 12th Night. So I just finished that yesterday and thought I was getting on a plane to New York tomorrow to start the writer's room on this TV show. But I think now that might start the first week of the new year instead of next week. But
is that the one with Kevin Kline?
Yeah.
That's right.
That MGM Plus is doing for Amazon. So that's exciting.
So you're back in London now?
I'm in London almost. I thought I was going to be in New York just for a week, but I've been in London teaching at Lambda, and before that, what was I doing? I was in New York working. We were scouting, and we were meeting casting directors and meeting writers to flesh out the writers' room, and so.
I've always found that quite interesting about you, because most American directors don't live in England. I mean, we've had a couple, Stanley Kubrick and a couple of others, but it's why do you think that's happened? Is it because obviously you went to Oxford?
You went to university here, and I had, I lived here for 10 years, and I started my career here. A couple of the people I work with the most, Andy Patterson, who's a wonderful producer, a writer named Rupert Walters, are people that I've had these long-standing relationships with. But to tell you the truth, I mean, it was sort of a weird, a concatenation of circumstances, I guess. I had this crazy divorce, and I was living in Boise, Idaho, and it was a very small town where there's just a lot of drama. And but one of my kids was already at university. I stayed till the second one went and took the third one with me over here. And I came back into a kind of ready-made life, I mean, I had so many friends here, and how I guess you do know, because you're probably, how old are you? 25, 28?
34.
Oh, well, anyway, you'll remember your 20s. In some ways it's a difficult decade, but it's also a decade where you make a lot of relationships, because you haven't sort of settled down. You haven't had, your life gets in a way smaller when you have children, because there's so much of your focus and attention is on them.
Sure.
So anyway, I had all these people, and I had a birthday party the other day in this not very big apartment, and 85 people showed up, and they were almost all people I knew from back then.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if there's a piano playing or something.
Oh, sorry, it's Charlie Brown Christmas. Are you objecting to that? Alexa, quiet, please. Sorry.
There we go. Excellent. But yeah, the 20s, that's something that when you're in them, it seems, when it is a huge part of your life, but when you look back, it reminds you of how young you were at the time. I don't know whether this is something that always happens when you get to your 30s and then 40s. You look back and think, wow, that's quite young. And it sort of puts into perspective how sort of short things are.
Well, yeah, that's for damn sure. But I also think there's something very particular about your 20s, which is I think there's a lot of identity pressure on you in your 20s that is solved to some extent by being someone's son and someone's student up through, you leave university, maybe you do a second degree, but by 24, 25, you're out in the world, and all of a sudden you start to see how unclear it is. I mean, you're not getting really clear. I was lucky because I knew I had a passion to tell stories, whether it was film or theater or as an actor or whatever. But still, I know I felt really lost. Like, where was I going to land? How was this going to work? Was I ever going to have any success? And I really found that a lot of, so I kind of I would say, call it negative self-consciousness, like paying a lot of attention to how I was feeling about everything and not being able to get out of myself and more connected to the world outside. So that, for me, the 20s was characterized by that. And then, once I had a child, which I guess I was about 35, that was like the tectonic plates in my soul sort of shifted, because all of a sudden it becomes about that, taking care of that new life and not so much obsessing about your own.
In terms of being a director or working in the arts as a creative, having a child, how do you think that shifted your perspective of things?
It took a kind of pressure off, because you're never going to achieve any kind of creative project like that. There's nothing as extraordinary that you will ever make or be engaged in the making of, or the fostering of, or the caretaking of, as a relationship with a child. So for me, I mean, I don't know that everybody finds it as satisfying as I did. I know lots of people do, but I didn't ever. And my attitude toward it was always, okay, we're going to have a baby to go. And so, from the time Atticus, my oldest son, was 6 months old, he was on the set. I took all the kids to every movie. We did all the post-production at Skywalker Ranch.
Oh, really?
So they grew up on Skywalker Ranch, like we'd go there for 5 months at a time, and they'd have a tutor, or they wouldn't, depending on the age. And they would just run around the ranch and, hang out with George Lucas. It was crazy, but they did. It was
having
normal.
a dad as a director, obviously they didn't know any different, but when did they start to understand that it's kind of a slightly unusual thing to sort of grow up around?
They grew up around a lot of, I would say, like, people in the creative world. Our house was always really full of musicians, a lot of musicians, a lot of writers. People would come and stay. We had a kind of a big guest house thing that a lot of people would just come and stay and live for periods of time, and actors would come and live. We housed actors for a couple of the theaters in Boise, and then Don DeLillo would come for the week, or John, what's his name? Oh my God, it's a big Native American activist John Trudell. There's a very good documentary about him. I don't know if you know much about that whole, the AIM, the American Indian Movement, and
No.
the taking of Alcatraz Island, and he was involved in a lot of kind of radical action, political action, and kind of really fascinating. I mean, as the story goes, the FBI was, I don't know whether I can't swear to this being true, but it certainly said, I've read it many times, that the FBI, in the pressure they were putting on him, ended up burning his family to death in a trailer in I guess in the Pine Ridge Lakota reservation. So it was quite intense. That whole, J. Edgar Hoover really had it in for the American Indian movement. He really looked at it as sort of like in the same way he did the Black Panthers,
and a lot of people. Yeah, he had sort of files on everyone.
Yeah, he had files on everyone, but that was definitely, that American Indian movement. I mean, have you ever seen a documentary called In the Spirit of Crazy Horse? About do you remember this incident in the 70s where FBI agents came on the land of these Lakota activists and got into a gunfight, and a couple of FBI guys got killed?
Was it on a reservation?
It's on, it's on
Yeah.
Pine Ridge, one of the Lakota reservations in South Dakota. Yeah. Anyway, extraordinary times. Hopefully, I mean, Christ knows, I don't know. There's always some things in there. It's very, very upsetting. The world at the moment as well.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. And as a director, when you're not filming, obviously you're working with Lambda and doing other bits of
I
creative
would,
things. What is the average day? Are you writing? Are you trying
I'm
to
writing.
develop things?
I write a lot. I've written. I mean, so I've got this TV show that I'm writing, which I know 6 more episodes of. I'm writing a new. There's another movie I just rewrote for an actor. There's another movie that's this Kepler movie that Helen Mirren and Michael Stuhlbarg are attached to. I've been doing some work on that. And then I wrote this rom-com with the woman I live with, Sarah Gabriel, for Altitude at Sony has at the moment. So that's yeah. So I've been writing a lot. I'm writing another new script. Just halfway through, but I'm also looking at, like today, I had a meeting about a play I might direct in the West End, and that's exciting. And then the Restless Natives. Did I talk about that last time?
You talked about a film, and then you talked about the Kevin Kline show about when the reporter got cancelled or the actor.
Yeah. But also we got asked by the National Theatre of Scotland to develop a theatrical musical from this movie Restless Natives I made a million years ago, and that was an incredible situation or experience to write a musical for the first time. I didn't know very much about theatrical musicals aside from going to them and occasionally liking one. But the process of writing that with Andy and Ninny had done it, writing the book, and then developing the music with Tim Sutton, and finding out that Ninny and Dunnett, who wrote the original screenplay, was a great lyricist. And now we've got, in 2025, we have an 8-city tour of the musical.
Really,
and maybe turning into 10, and we may get as far south as Newcastle and Manchester. Respectively. Well, I guess Darlington's further south, so Darlington and in the east, and Manchester in the west. But anyway, that's really been fun, really fun. So lots of. I've ceased to kind of experience massive distinction between one kind of storytelling or one kind of activity, as a maker. From another. I'm interested, I'm fed by all of it. And so it's great. Yeah.
what makes you nervous now? Because you've done so much. What it's taking on a
Nervous.
musical? Does it sort of think, oh, crikey?
No. That never made me nervous. That it was partly made me nervous. Didn't make me nervous because I was too stupid to be nervous. I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know enough about how demanding a form it is, and the way in which it's demanding is strange too, because it's demanding in that I think aside from stand-up comedy, I don't think there's any audience as ruthless as a musical theater audience. They want to be fed. They want to be entertained, and you better fucking entertain them. And that's so every minute you're just concerned about keeping them in it and engaging. So it is it's a high pressure form to work in, because you can't hide behind ambiguity, you can't hide behind profundity, you can't hide behind anything. You just have to give them a great entertaining experience. So that's been demanding and fun. So that was scary. I suppose this little production of Twelfth Night, I had a couple of moments because it was just a situation where I was dealing with a group of actors who weren't very experienced, and going in and just taking on the very simple task of teaching them to deal with Shakespeare and relationships among characters in Shakespeare, and dealing with the language in a really clear and precise way. And I was quite nervous about how far we were going to get before we had to present it, but it worked out well. What else? I guess the TV show, because it's this flickering green light thing's gone on a long time. There's part of me that gets anxious about, I don't know if I'm anxious about it. I'm just like, I'm a little disappointed that it didn't happen, that we weren't able to open the room this week. But and it's gone on since 2018, so it's been a long process. And then running into the strikes, and before that running into COVID, and before that running into Kevin wanting a big rewrite at a certain point after I thought he was satisfied with the material. And so there's been a lot of stop and go, but I think now it's like we're
When you get an idea, what is so you've written it or you've started to develop it, what do you personally do then? Do you go to people that that you've met in the industry and worked with before? Do you go to an agent? Do you approach different networks? How does that process work?
Well, so ask me about like I mean, I would
let's say the TV
it's
show.
going to work. It's going to work differently in every. Yeah. Okay. In very rough form, a producer friend of mine, the woman who produced Midsummer Night's Dream, Leslie Erdang, brought me a very rough idea about a Broadway star who, what if this Broadway star got canceled and had to go back to his hometown, or whatever, and so that was kind of the starting point. And then so we started working out, more detail as to who that character was, and just the way you would with any story, just kind of pitch around trying to figure out, okay, what is it we really want to do, and what do we want to make a show about? And then engaging Kevin was in this case, because I really didn't want to do it with anybody else. It was like, he is for America, the archetypical Broadway personality, plus he's a comic genius. So once he was in, then it became about, okay, I want to find another writer who has more experience in television, just in terms of the specific demands of, running a show and all that stuff. Because it's not, I'd never really been in that world. I mean, I directed pilots, but that's just like, a short job. It's like directing a little movie. You're in, you shoot it, you're out. So I didn't, I was trying to educate myself. It's like the musical. I'm trying to educate myself about television. So there was this show that I loved called Slings and Arrows that had been developed in Canada, some in the 90s, I think, about a Shakespeare company. So I thought, well, let's talk to Bob Martin, the guy who developed it. And he really was taken by the idea. And then we worked together a little bit, and we really hit it off. And I was like, I've never liked writing with anyone as much as I like writing with Bob. I have absolute trust in him, and I think he does pretty much in me. And I mean, and it's also, people always say, the last thing you want is for an actor to do your notes as a director, because you want to say, express your concern or your idea, and have them take that dross and spin it into gold. And I get that a lot when I'll do a draft and I'll send it back to Bob, and I'm like, surprised and delighted by what comes back. And then he sort of feels the same way, and we have a very good, there's a kind of dialectical rhythm that we've developed that keeps making things better. So that's been a really, really, really a great experience. So
have the TV people left you alone to do that? They haven't come in and gone, oh no, we would rather have this.
Well, they won't leave us alone eventually, but okay. So far they've left us largely alone, because they really like, I mean, it's been through a number of iterations, right? We wrote it the first time as an hour. Then we were told, okay, they don't, when MGM, okay, so we pitched it as an hour to this company called Anonymous Content. There's a big management / production company in LA. Look after everyone from Emma Stone. They have a great client list, but they also then, they've just been a producer on this Alfonso Cuarón TV show with Kevin Kline and Cate Blanchett. And so we go pitch to them. We have a number of offers for it, but we decide to go with them. They decide to pay for a pilot. They want an hour. We write an hour pilot. They really like it. Then I re-engage with Kevin. He wants a bunch of changes. That's weeks of dealing with that, but then we get that done. Everybody likes it better. That's fine. Then we sell it to MGM, and they say, oh, we want a half hour. So then we go back and go, okay, what do we do? How do we keep what's really working in the half hour? Not to mention the fact that we've outlined now 8-hour-long shows. So we got a lot of material. Now we have 10 half-hour shows, 35 minutes or whatever they now call a premium half hour. Like, you know, sort of like Ted Lasso kind of thing. So then we go and we engage in that process of reworking the material and getting it to work at a half hour. Then MGM changes their mind and say, we don't want 10, we want 8. So we have to go back and rework break down the show again. And now that we bring a third writer in, we'll break down the show again. And then, of course, as you say, then we'll go into production and they'll really get focused on it and probably just notice into insanity, which is what I hear about TV. I have no reason to think these guys will do it any more than anybody else, but I also just know everybody tells me that it's a battle, to process all the input.
And had Kevin been not able to do the show for whatever reason, would you have just called it a day or come back to it another time? Because you said you only wanted him to play. Because if you have him in your mind, of course, that's your part of the creative.
Well, I don't know. Would I have? I mean, that's a hard one to. Would I have abandoned all the work? And I probably would have at least gone through the process of thinking about options. But I was really committed to keeping Kevin in. I think he's absolutely the right person, and I really like working with him. We have a really good creative relationship. So I suppose that I would cross that bridge when it got blown out from under me. But to this point.
Yeah. And working in TV, you worked as TV as it is now in the streaming. It's obviously a lot different to how it used to be.
Sure.
Where do you see go on?
I'm sorry. No, I was never drawn to like trying to do, as a director in network television in America, you were just sort of a gun for hire. You were coming in and, you have a big piece of paper with all your shots on it. You're just trying to shoot like 60 setups a day. And it just never was I'd never had any reason to go do that. But this is, you're right, very different. Have you read the Peter Biskin book called Pandora's Box, the new one about television?
Not the new one. No, he wrote one before. Is it the Raging Bulls one he wrote?
Raging Bulls.
Yeah, that's right.
Raging Bulls. Yeah. But the book about TV is good. It's about, starts with sort of HBO and The Sopranos and sort of follows the.
Yeah, because that's where it sort of changed it, didn't it? It really shook things up with that.
I would say Oz maybe was the first thing that really changed it. But The Sopranos made such a massive splash, everybody forgets about what a big deal Oz was.
How much would you direct yourself of this show? Because I know it's done in blocks, isn't it, with TV?
Well, again, there's many different models. I have the right to direct them all. I think probably I'll certainly direct the first two and the last two. And maybe it also depends. It depends on the delivery schedule, depends on when we get started, depends on, there's one version of this is you shoot everything and then you edit everything. There's another version that you're editing while you're going. So you have to give it off to someone. I think they are talking about it being in the broadcast schedule for January of 25. I think we will have the luxury of being able to shoot and then cut, so I won't be kind of completely lost. But on the other hand, I'm also co-show running with Bob. So there's a bunch of responsibility that comes with that because you're in charge of editing all the scripts and all that stuff. So there's a good chance that I would give over 2 or 3 of them to somebody else.
I think people just forget or don't even know the huge responsibility that goes behind these things and the whole work.
The show running job is a massive job and a politically complex job. Just because so we've got our producers, but then on top of that we've got the anonymous content producers, then we got the MGM Plus producers, then we've got Amazon. So you can, I know how many notes one producer can bury you in, and so having that many layers and that much bureaucracy, and you know, agendas that will vary. That's another thing. They won't. And the other thing about TV is that, okay, so we have 2 episodes, and let's say, you know, a relatively minor character really pops for the audience and they start getting this, then they're going to say, we want more of her, or we want less of that, or we want, so you're like constantly also, you've written the script, you've done the outline, you've written the script, but then you're kind of dealing with what is coming at you from the world as the world evaluates the show. So, you know, that's another thing, which I mean, that's just not something you do it in a very limited way in the preview process with movies, but not like this, not like it constantly.
Yeah, I suppose with film, when you've got the film, it's your whole artistic vision. Whereas with the TV, if a character, people like it and respond to it well, you want to boost that, or the network wants to boost that.
It's a living, developing organism, you know. And I haven't done. I mean, when you're making a movie, it is too, and you're seeing things that are working, and you're thinking, how can I take that strand and maybe emphasize it more? And then you get into the preview process, which is the most difficult and potentially undermining part of the whole movie making experience. And then, you know, because then you're dealing with, you know, what you're dealing with, a lot of input. This is, I suppose, the tricky thing is that a lot of times people will say that something's problematic. Let's say there's something that they experience it as being something in the third act of the movie. The problem is they don't really know what the problem is there, but but what they're telling you is there's a problem. You then have to do the kind of Sherlock Holmesian kind of you know, investigation to figure out what is that thing in the first act that is causing that problem in the third act, you know.
Yeah,
so
I was reading William Goldman's
translating the notes. You're translating, all of a sudden translating input into what you actually think is causing the issue. What about William Goldman?
Yeah, his second book, Which Lie Did I Tell? He talks about this very problem, and I've just passed that bit. But in the third act, it's something that you did early on, and you've got to go back through, and you've got to find it's such a common problem.
It's a common, and it's also a common problem because the other thing that you get, I've never made a movie, and I've never talked to anyone who's gone through a preview who hasn't gotten the note, it starts too slow. Every preview audience, I don't know if it's partly because they're keyed up because they think, oh, I'm responsible here, and I'm going to have to fill out a card, so they're not really watching exactly like an audience would watch. But there's also this tendency, which has really been exacerbated by the streaming world, to front load everything. I mean, you know, this is what I talk to people in writing for Netflix particularly, who say, you wouldn't believe how many times you get the note that just take the biggest, most exciting sequence and put it at the beginning. Why? Because they don't want people switching off, right? They want to keep the audience. So they will sacrifice, or potentially sacrifice, the structural integrity of a story because they need to keep the viewers tuned in. It's very interesting. You know, like I went to a production of She Stoops to Conquer that Oliver Goldsmith played the other day that my friend Freddie Fox and Tanya Reynolds are doing. And you know, it's a play it's a well-made play. The first act, you're not laughing all the time, but it's setting up a whole bunch of, you know, bombs under the furniture that then start going off in the third act, and it becomes absolutely delightful. But you know, people used to make an investment in a first act of a story, and now I think everybody's just wanting to make sure that people, I don't know, maybe it's what you said about attention spans. Maybe it is that.
Do you think the network or the producers, whoever, are underestimating audiences?
Well, I don't know.
People will switch on.
I don't know. I mean, they obviously have all the data. I mean, God knows Netflix is obsessed with algorithms and data. And I mean, they know exactly who viewed what for how many minutes. or excuse me, in how many seconds, so I'm certainly not quibbling with their data. I believe that if they say people are switching off, they might be switching off, but they might be switching off for other reasons. They might be switching off because the material isn't really as strong as it should be, or that in the first act they haven't found interesting enough solutions that also really feed the integrity of the storytelling. I mean, that could be. I can't tell you for sure. I don't know, but I just know. I've just had talked to a number of people who've told me the same story in terms of their development experience with Netflix.
Of course. Where do you think the film, TV industry, well, they're two different industries, but where do you think it's going? Do you think cinema is going to shrink? I know people have this fear, but I think a lot of films are still doing well in theaters.
I mean, I know it's a boring thing to say because everybody says it, but I do still feel, I mean, COVID really re-influenced our desire for the public, the shared public experience of art. I mean, the theaters come back more quickly, partly because the theater is something you can't do in your living room, right? You can't see Andrew Scott do One Man Uncle Vanya in your living room, but obviously the experience of filmed content, you can build a home theater where you have a pretty good replica of what's that's going to be. So there is, as there's now this, there's an awful lot of conversations about wanting something theatrical, wanting something that has to be seen in the theater, so and I think that smaller movies are suffering for that. They're suffering for other reasons too. I mean, the model under which independent cinema was made is so long, that meaning, and what I mean by that is going to a market, doing pre-sales, getting minimum guarantees from a lot of territories, taking that paper to the bank, getting it discounted, but then getting that cash from the bank, and knowing that those people are going to pay up once they bought the movie, or what is, I mean, it's just that you can't make sense of the model anymore. There's no, there's no ad television revenue in Italy or Spain anymore. There are all these little pieces that came together to create a model that worked, and now my friend, who I mentioned before, Andy Patterson's working very hard to get a more aggressive tax credit for film in the UK, and that can make a big difference. But right now, it's just like people are really struggling to get a movie made. It was really intriguing, wasn't it, that when the SAG strike happened, there was a lot of talk right off the bat about how this was going to be a boon for the British industry. It was a fucking disaster.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
No, there was no work for anyone. And you just saw how much of the British industry is reliant on America. And I don't think people were aware of it or saw it. And I know that there's now, people being very vocal about British distributors being very vocal about the fact we need bigger British movies that can work in the cinema and find a wider audience. So that's quite intriguing.
And how do you think they'll push that forward?
Well, it's part of it is a material. Well, look, the other thing, here's another thing that was intriguing. And these all go to make, to just make the problem more of a tangle. But so Cannes last year, it was just because I was involved in a couple of projects. There was so much openness on the part of the foreign sales companies to say, you know, sure, let this actor who isn't, say, a big star, but if they'll commit to this small movie, we'll be able to sell it. There's a real hunger for product. People came back from Cannes like stunned, saying, and all you heard afterwards was, it has to be absolute big A-list names to sell anything. So part of the answer would be in figuring out. I mean, it's just such a complicated problem because casting has become so hard, partly because the streamers throw so much money at talent. And not only that, create production deals for them. And so, you know, what used to be an actor when I was younger, an actor might make 6 movies a year, and they would have these slots, and you would kind of look to see where you could find a way to get. Now, you know, I don't know. I think Rebecca Ferguson does I don't know. I don't know where her show. I think her show's on Amazon. I don't know. Might be on Apple. I don't know. But she does that. But then she also then has a production company. So she's doing her thing. So she never, you know, she rarely is available, you know. So so that's casting is, I mean, the key to those bigger movies, you know, a British movie like Dunkirk, say, for example, is about cast. But how do you find them? How do you get that cast without an American studio kind of money to hand out, and a director who's I mean, I guess maybe the world will become more dominated by a few really big directors who have very, very strong talent relationships and can kind of guarantee they can deliver them. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know what is going to, but what I do know is the hunger for content and the hunger for story is not going away. So,
no, of course not. No.
So
and
gonna.
Do you think this will give birth to another sort of a bigger independent movement?
Well, I don't know, because the question is where does the independent money come from? What's the model to make an independent movie? Where does that money come from? That's what I'm trying to. Everybody's trying to figure out. And the answer is, you know, people in France and Germany, I mean, you make movies when you've got big injections of soft money from the government or from regions, or, you know, a big tax credit like in Italy. You know, there's a lot of work in Italy, but it's that 40% tax credit plus, you know, you do an official co-production, Italian co-production, you get another big chunk from the government. Then depending on what region it is, you're going to get another big chunk from the region. So, you know, you might be able to defray more than 60% of your budget in soft money, which is great, you know. So, and that's why those countries you're seeing a lot of, not necessarily indigenous production, but you're seeing a lot of production.
Of course. And working in America and working here, what are the two major differences, if any major differences, between the two? Because you're going to do in the TV show there now, and your films, will they be shot here or in Europe?
No, they're all European.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, there's one of them that's partly shot in America, but it's mostly in Italy. Ask me that again. Sorry, I spaced out.
So between working in America, for example, and then working here or in Europe, are there two major differences between crew?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, I have a tendency to work with a lot of the same people over and over and over again. So, I mean, they tend to then bring, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't worked in them. Well, yes, I did. I went. Best Man shot in New Orleans, and that was a great crew, brilliant crew. And then my ill-fated Gore Vidal movie, the Kevin Spacey thing, was all Italian crew, and it was a fabulous crew. We inherited most of Ridley's crew from
All the Money in the World, was it?
All the Money in the World.
That's right. I remember.
They just came on to our show, and they were crack. And then I knew a bunch of crew already from Midsummer Night's Dream who came back. All the Grips came back from, though I knew from that, and just had a fabulous line producer, fabulous first AD. Eduardo Ferretti. Great AD department. Great. I mean, all the way around. Great costume, department I've worked with before. Gabriella Pescucci, who won an Oscar for Age of Innocence, is a wonderful, wonderful costumer. Great hair and makeup people that came from Ridley. So anyway, yeah, fantastic. I've rarely, it's been a long time since I would say that I wasn't incredibly happy with the crews I've worked with. I've been very lucky, very lucky. I'm careful about it. I mean, I remember one of the first producers I talked to in my life was always like, may have even been David Putnam, who said, I cast my crew as carefully as that we cast the actors. And we really try to do the same thing.
And if you're happy to talk about it, the film Gore, has that had any movement on it at all?
No, not really. I mean, it's crazy. It makes me crazy because it is like I think I might have said to you before. I think it's the best movie I ever made, and it's sitting there, and virtually no one's seen it. But I haven't given up hope, and now that and I know that there's still a very mixed feeling in the world about Kevin, even though that in terms of the actual legal cases, he's come out on the right end of those. I don't pretend to know, be an expert on all the ins and outs of Kevin's past, but I still, on the other hand, I think the movie has something to say, and I think and there was when Kevin wasn't a producer on it or anything, it was just a member of the cast, and so I don't quite understand why people experience the film as something potentially toxic or difficult, but I don't really understand it. But I also, I'm a very big supporter of the Me Too movement, and I'm a supporter of people feeling safe and happy in the workplace, and so I mean, if things, even though it cost us a lot to not have that movie be seen, I think the general re-examination of how the business was run was absolutely crucial. And so if that ends up being a casualty, then it ends up being a casualty. And I'm, as I think I may have said to you before, you could put it down to like bad luck or bad timing or whatever. But if you're going to bitch a lot about a moment of bad luck in your life, you then have to kind of look at like all the moments of extraordinary good luck you've had, because I've had really good luck a lot. So
yeah, for sure. No, that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can just eat you up. You end up dwelling on this thing for so long.
It does not eat me up. It makes me sad not to be able to have. I think it's an artifact that would be valuable in the dialogue that goes on between, how do we make, what sort of choices do we make, that are authentic, how much of ourselves are we willing to compromise to get what we want? I mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot of interesting issues in the movie that are really relevant right now. So for that reason, I wish it were, in the conversation, but I can't control it. So
of course, yeah. And you said you're halfway through writing a script at the moment.
Yeah. I can't talk very much about.
No, of course, no.
But
in terms of script writing,
do
you get the idea, or is it something you've adapted, or do you just sit down and start typing, or do you plan the film out?
It depends. I mean, sometimes, like with Last Station, I think I outlined. I knew by the time I started writing, at a really clear path. And this thing, this comedy I've written in Sardinia, I sort of had an idea of a little, like just a seed of an idea and a character's voice in my head. And so I just started writing, and I just kept, I mean, I remember having a conversation with Tom Stoppard when he was writing some stuff for, on Restoration. And I asked him sort of similar question about, your work is so complex, and I mean, do you outline it a lot? Because it really feels like, kind of remarkable piece of geometry, And he said, I don't really outline very much, but what I do notice, what I'm writing well, is I will come to these forks in the road and I'll realize, oh my God, now that I've done that, oh, I could do that. And then I go down that road until it forks and I go, oh, that's presented an opportunity for me to do that. And so I think that movie was a bit like was the one I just mentioned, the referred to as the rabbit film because there's a rabbit in it. It plays a major role. That was that process. With the TV, Bob and I outline in 3 acts pretty clearly, because writing together, we need to kind of have a shared vision of the basic road we're going down. This new thing is it's very, I mean, it's a comedy, but it's personal. It's very much about my divorce. And so but I remember when I was first telling this story to Stacy Scher, who's a producer at a company called Jersey Films. And she said, but you can never tell that story unless it's a comedy, even though it was like a gut wrenching, my wife of 23 years fell in love with my best friend and left, right? So it was like big drama in small town. But she was right, and Shaw was right, saying, comedy is tragedy plus time. And now I can see how to structure a satire about projection and fantasies about happiness, and it's become it's really fun. It's really fun to write.
Has it been quite cathartic for you to do so?
I don't know. I think the catharsis, I've had a number of moments in the kind of process of getting better about the whole thing, which I would say feel cathartic. I don't know what it feels. I don't know. It amuses me a lot when I'm writing it. I know that. I don't know if it's cathartic as much as just like, taking something that's a painful truth and being able to, I wonder if it maybe gives me, again, I've always say about that divorce that, it proved to me without any shadow of any doubt that all my strategies for control were complete nonsense. It was just like, it just taught me that I just saw very clearly how much our desire to control things is an illusion. And but again, telling the story is a different way of trying to control that narrative. I hadn't really thought about that. Maybe that's what I enjoy, is kind of being able to forget for a moment that I can't control it.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that before, but you ask good questions, so it makes me think about new things.
And the film, when do you hope to bring your film into production? The set one you just rewritten, the Helen Mirren one, you said you just read.
Oh, the Helen Mirren one. That's looking quite hopeful at the moment, but I don't know. I don't know at the moment. What looks most likely is going and doing the TV show in the first half of next year, and then hopefully this film set in Sardinia looks like it could become the thing that would be real next, which hopefully I could shoot in like October, November of next year, and then I go into the musical.
Oh yeah.
In the spring like right from the get-go in 2025. Then of course, if the TV show gets picked up for another season, then that's a whole another kettle of fish.
And the film set in Sardinia, is it set in Sardinia or is it just filmed there?
It's set in Sardinia. It's set.
I've been there. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so I've been there a lot lately.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a fantastic place, but it's also kind of has this primitive. I mean, it's a fun story. So So a friend of mine told me, she said, that a friend of hers her brother died in Paris, and she went to Paris to kind of take care of his things. And when she got to the apartment, there was a rabbit in the apartment that he kept as a pet. And she was just really like baffled and intrigued by what does she do with this rabbit. that's all I knew. And but it just stuck in my mind. I have no idea why, because it's not really exactly the most dramatic center for a film. But then,
I guess it's symbolic, isn't it, of the living thing that's been left.
well, it's that, but it's also something about it being a rabbit as opposed to a cat or a dog. There's something when you look at a rabbit, you're like, I really have no idea what's going on inside of you. You know, I mean, I feel like with my cats, I kind of know them, and
Yeah.
I've been around cats and dogs. I've been around lots of animals my whole life, but rabbits I find kind of like totally impenetrable. And this became a story about a woman who's a film editor, and a real recluse, and kind of, borderline, um, she's a bit spectrumy, but really lives in the dark, and her life, her love, her children, everything are the films that she makes. And she works with this director and they're having a crisis in this particular film, or he really knows he has to get it down to a certain length, and she won't cut it, and he can't control her. Anyway, in the middle, that's just the setup. And then she gets a phone call that this black sheep brother of hers, who she's the only person in the family who still has anything to do with him, in and out of rehab and fucked up in a number of ways, has died. And she has to go to Sardinia, she thinks, very quickly before she runs back to the editing room to keep working. And when she gets there, she finds this rabbit in his house. And the rabbit and Sardinia is a place which pretty much everything on the island, including every Sardinian, will eat that rabbit. So she's like, she doesn't think she can just leave the rabbit. And then in the process, she meets the rabbit's veterinarian, who's a friend of the brother. And then she starts to fall in love and open herself up to life. And so it has that kind of, it's in that subgenre of, I suppose, Under the Tuscan Sun, although I hope I think it's quirkier and certainly not sentimental, certainly not soft, because she's a very, very odd and bumpy character. But that's been quite fun, and so we've scattered a lot for that, and I would want to make it for a low budget with Italian friends and with friends from here, being produced by women named Annalise Davies and my friend Mark Antonio Borghese from Rome. And so it's just a big family affair, and I think we'll get it made. I think we'll get it made.
Yeah, well, hopefully. We talked earlier about the things that have changed, like the Me Too movement, which have been great change in the industry. Is there anything that you think has gone for the worse in the industry that as you've seen over the years that you miss, or you think? Obviously, we spoke about the big studio system and how, unless you've got an A-lister, getting financed, but anything else that you can think of that you kind of think has gone?
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a time. I mean, look, when I was making movies in the 80s and 90s, I mean, Disney was making, this is just Disney, the Disney input, forget also had Touchstone. Disney was making 30 movies a year. Touchstone was making another 15 or 20. Warner's was making more than 50 movies a year. Universal was making 30 or 40 movies a year. Sony was making 30. Fox was making 30. So there was so many jobs and so much opportunity, and there was a big middle of the industry that turned out, genre movies, but some really good movies like Jagged Edge or Sea of Love or Seven, or I mean, really good, but they were movies for an adult audience that didn't need to make, if they made domestically $55-60 million, it was a success. That middle of the business is gone. It's just gone. Adults don't want to go to the cinema. I mean, very much. I mean, it's different in an urban place like New York or London. Yes, of course, there's still a big adult audience that will go to an art film or whatever. Although it seems to still not quite recovered since COVID. But but generally speaking, in Boise, Idaho, I come from, most they don't want to go fight through that. You've got to get a babysitter, go park, pay a fucking, $15-17 to go to the cinema, another $30 to buy popcorn and everything else. And it's like a big event, and so unless it's something like Barbie, which is a big event and something that becomes something everybody should see, there people just aren't. That audience is not going back, and they're also not being catered to. They're just not being catered to. Well, they're being catered to by the streaming services, and so that's where people are getting their stories.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot about sort of the middle ground films that sound expensive, but they're not in a filmmaking capacity, sort of like $20-30 million. They're just not there now.
Not at all. No, that part of the industry is no more. And it used to be the biggest part of the industry. And it created a very healthy business in terms of, people, lots of people working in it, and lots of people, and it also, I think it was an antidote, sorry, to the divisiveness of the world as it exists now. And what I mean by that is because there was a common conversation about, it's sort of like what network television, like it or not, supplied in America when there was just NBC, ABC, CBS, and even then Fox. There was a notion that we were all kind of in it together, and that we shared a set of values that, even though there were many things that weren't agreed upon, there was some fundamental things that were, which I think the internet and social media has really eaten away at that. And it's very hard to find a platform for anything that's in the middle of the conversation. The platforms are, for the really active platforms, will be far out on the left and far out on the right, and then as we know, it's then reinforced in everything that we get back, because the algorithms feed, or everything starts eating itself, and that is one of the things that I think is, I think that that a common set of stories, a common mythology, is one of the things that makes us all engage with each other's humanity. And I think when you lose that area in the center, the conversation in the center, things can get quite problematic.
No, that's right. And do you think we'll ever see it come back?
I don't know. I don't know what will happen to this. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how it comes back. I suppose. Well, it's interesting. Let's take, I'd love to read a really good book about the Republican Party in America and what's happened to it, because I grew up in a world where the Republicans were, my family were all Republicans. I've never been, but my grandfather was, we grew up in Idaho. It was a party of small businessmen, maybe not particularly labor friendly, but basically the values between, there were more shared values between the Republican and the Democratic parties at that point. And there was even areas where you wouldn't have known, okay, there's a guy named Lowell Schweiker from Pennsylvania who was a Republican, but he voted often with the Democrats. And there were Democrats who voted often with the Republicans. And
so they were swing votes. They would go if
but they were and there wasn't the same kind of pressure in terms of towing the line that there is now. And so I do think that the one thing that might drive a revival of the center is if the outside edges get more extreme. Here's a clear example. Where Trump is now is forcing a lot of Republicans to the center. And by the same token, to some extent, the woke movement and there's activity on the left, which also will make a lot of, at least Americans, move away from that, because then it's not who they are. So they're looking for somewhere to exist in the center. So the issue to me is not, I mean, I still imagine I could be the majority of American voters are somewhere in the center, but they don't have. There's no rallying point, and
Where do they go to? Yeah.
The internet provides no rallying point.
No, you're at one
social
end or the
media,
other. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so, but I don't think it's necessarily representing either end of it, the spectrum, or representing a majority. But they certainly, but there's a tremendous amount of it's a signal to noise problem in the center. There's so much noise in the left and the right that there's no way for the center to find a way to express itself in a forceful and attractive enough way to make it a really powerful political force. So I don't know what fixes that. But there will be a point where, I'm really interested in I just can't imagine that America will elect Donald Trump again. I can't imagine after what, he showed of himself. But it's a really frightening idea.
Do you think people before felt they were forced to vote for him, even though they didn't? Because these people didn't just come out of the woods. These were people who were voted for Obama before. These are sort of, like you said, the middle of the road Americans.
Well, I think they were voting. I think there was an exhaustion with Washington and what they thought was, a lot of people who were not really representing them. And I think it was a little like, this is not a new idea, but I think it was a little like Brexit. I think a lot of Trump voters were protest voting in the same way that I think a lot of pro-Brexit voters were protest voting. And I think everybody kind of woke up like they did after the Brexit referendum thinking, fuck, I never thought that would happen.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that definitely happened. I talked to a lot of people who voted for Trump or didn't vote for Hillary because they just were voting against a system that they wanted to make a protest. And they ended up with more than they bargained for.
Yeah, careful what you wish for. That's
exactly. Yeah.
And to finish on a more sort of positive note, I normally ask whether there's a film you haven't seen that you're ashamed of. But is there a film you've seen recently that you think's really good or has surprised you?
Yes. Oh, yes. I don't know if it's a surprise to me, but I've seen some really. I felt like for the last couple of years, because I've watched this time of year, I watch really a lot of movies. I just watched 25 foreign movies that qualify to vote for the international film. But I love Poor Things. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's brilliant. I love Poor Things. I really, really loved Maestro. I think Maestro is
I haven't seen that yet. Yeah.
So
it's not out till the 20th here, I think.
Yeah, I just see them at, we have these screenings that get set up and I go to. I really like May December. I'm a big Todd Haynes fan anyway, but I thought May December was a really interesting film. I really, really liked Anatomy of a Fall. I think it's a wonderful movie. I think Zone of Interest is fascinating. I like. An American Fiction. Have you seen American Fiction?
No.
Great. Have you seen the trailer even?
Watch the trailer. I don't know.
Watch the trailer. It's great. It'll be one of the movies nominated for Best Picture.
I guess you don't know when things come out because you see them before everyone else does.
I see it. Yeah. I don't know where they come out. No. And I watched Barbie the other night, which I enjoyed. I was surprised. I liked it as much as I'd heard kind of really mixed things about it, but I thought it was perfectly pleasant.
Cool
experience and a lot of clever stuff in it.
Yeah.
What about you? What have you seen that you liked?
I saw the David Fincher, The Killer. I really liked that.
I haven't seen that. I've heard mixed stuff about that.
I mean, I think people talk about Fincher and they compare it to Seven and his earlier things. I really liked it. I thought it was quite a simple film. It wasn't overly complex. It was just quiet, and I was glued to it. I really loved it. A lot of people I know who love Fincher didn't think it was that great, but I really enjoyed it. Just the stillness of it. There's hardly any dialogue. It's kind of narration. There's a lot of narration in it.
Well, I'll watch it. I have it here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And just there's just tension through it because you're with the character.
Have you seen Zone of Interest?
No, I haven't. I haven't even seen Anatomy for a Fall yet.
Oh
but
yeah.
it's on my list to watch soon. But yeah, no, I hear good things. It's a courtroom drama, isn't it? Or
Kind.
legal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does develop into that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's on my.
Yeah, it's really good. Same actress
Mhm.
in Anatomy of Fall and Zone of Interest. The woman who was in Tony, what was it called? Tony Erdmann. Sandra starts with an A.
I know who you mean.
Sandra. It's embarrassing that I can not know because she's a genius. She's a wonderful actress.
Let me see.
Starts with an H. Sandra.
That's on me. Here we go. Sandra Hula.
Yeah.
That's right.
She's wonderful. So she's great. That whole cast is Anatomy of Fall is really, really good. But I mean, Emma Stone in Poor Things and Carey Mulligan in Maestro give two of the best performances from actresses I've seen for a long time.
Yeah, I've never seen her do anything bad. She's always does things.
Good.
Always does good things. I saw her in the theater as well.
Carey?
Yeah, she was excellent.
She is. She's very good, talented. Who else? I'm trying to think of what else I've seen. I've seen a lot. Those are the things that really stood. I mean, I loved my friend Robert Downey's performance in Oppenheimer. I didn't love the movie as much as many people seem to.
No.
Yeah, and I felt sort of the same way about Killers of the Flower Moon. I wasn't completely, although there's brilliant stuff in it. I mean, brilliant stuff in it. But yeah. Anyway, so it's been a good year. I think it's a really good year, really strong year.
Yeah.
Trying to think of what else was on my foreign film radar. I was like, it's just a completely arbitrary. The Teacher's Lounge, the German foreign language film is good. I like that a lot. Anyway, that's probably enough information about that. Now I'm trying to figure out where you've gone.
Oh, can you not see me now?
No, but that's because I've done something stupid. There you go. Back.
Good.
Well,
thanks for coming on again, Michael. I mean,
I hope it was useful. I always
massively.
Okay.
I love hearing about film industry, film directors, producers, and you're all of them now. A showrunner.
Yeah, crazy.
So yeah, hopefully that goes well. Will you have a break over Christmas?
Yeah.
You'll be here in London.
I'll be here in London. Yep.
Excellent. Well,
okay.
Michael, thank you very much. See you again. See you later on, Michael.
All right. Very good.
Take care now.
Okay.
Bye now. Bye.